So we'll have to catch up on time. We've got several speakers to get right to them. 2 minutes each. Kate, we'll look to you to get the timer started. We'll start with Josephine. Then this Laura Retty. And then Sherry Frost. Josephine? You have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Well, I am here on behalf of Mount Airy Dog Park. Just coming in to see what's happening because we've had conversation after conversation from December of last year until March of the beginning of this year. Nothing has been done. Not one thing has been done, not one renovation. We're looking to see, somebody passed away and left a grant of $52,000 last October. Where is it? It was specifically for Mount Airy Dog Park to do renovations because the fence is starting to dilapidate. There's extreme dust. There's no dog poop bag dispensers. There's no park benches because they got ripped out a year ago for no reason aside from needing a little bit of repairs. They were eco-friendly, so mad about that. So I'm here on behalf of everyone at Mount Airy Dog Park that couldn't be here today because somebody is not doing their job and we're very upset about it.
Thank you. All right, we've got Laura, you're next, and then Sherry.
I didn't get involved in this. I did from the beginning, but it sort of slapped off because coverage for the Clifton Ball dog park was very minimal on next door. I never knew when meetings were or this or that. But after listening to her and how her park is going down, I hope that's not something that we in Clifton are gonna see. And I don't understand why you want to park in there in the first place, but obviously people with money are gonna put it there whether we want it there or not. I mean, they got top people as if they're a committee and they have more say than the residents themselves. People have been trying to take bed by bed. I have lived here 74 damn years. This is my park. And you just want to take it bit by bit. Now that I control myself again, after listening to her, I think we should want some guarantees that's not going to happen to our park if the park goes through. And everything changes every time I hear about Clifton Park. I don't want to bore you, but please consider not putting it there. Don't let it go downhill if you put it there. Be careful of the smells, of the water, the deterioration, the dog fights, the people themselves, the traffic you're adding. People do get in cars and come. That little corner, houses, so much traffic, you're adding more to it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sherry. And then next up is Aidan Odell.
Morning.
Morning, Sherry.
This is my valley. Isn't it beautiful? Adolf Strauch designed the entrance to our park. He's a famous landscape architect. We're trying to preserve what he created, which is magical and magnificent. And there are no problems in this area of the park. It's a peaceful, beautiful place where people can just relax, read a book, have a picnic. We're trying so hard to protect our green space, and it feels like you're not hearing us. So that's why we keep coming back. And my knees are shaking and I have not gotten any better at standing here talking to you, but please don't do this in this spot. Can we find a place that's already developed instead of destroying green space? Thank you.
Sherry. Aidan, you're up, and then next is Bob Highland, then Susan Foreman.
Hi, I'm Aidan. I'm just here to support not putting in the Burnett Woods Dog Park. I just don't think, I mean, all the people I've talked to, a lot of UC students, I'm in UC Mountaineering Club. really one of the biggest clubs on campus. I don't think I've heard anybody want this park to be placed. I think a way better idea would be, I just think the AstroTurf aspect of it is kind of ridiculous. I don't think we need to be removing green space like my colleagues before me said. I think a fence around, a normal grass spot, I think that would be a much more better alternative, but I just think Burnett Woods in general, people can just bring their dogs there. I don't really see a reason for, taking out and like having construction come in, forever chemicals being put down, just kind of ridiculous. And I feel like there's not much transparency around the whole thing, so.
Bob, and then Susan, and then Cynthia.
Good morning, President North, Vice President Lee, Commissioners. Between 1970 and 2019, North American bird populations dropped by 2.9 billion with a B, mating adults. For some segments of that population, like grassland species of birds, that's greater than 50% of the birds that we had in 1970. The authors of that paper, who are the director of the Cornell Ornithology Lab and the former director of the Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center, and now the director of the Georgetown Environment Institute, said that those data indicate that there is an unraveling of our ecosystem, the systems upon which our survival relies. Luckily, there are some organizations like the Audubon Society who are working very hard to protect spaces that support bird populations. The only Cincinnati park that is an important bird area, which is an international designation, is Burnett Woods. And you want to develop in it. Year after year after year, we've seen proposal after proposal after proposal to develop it. Imagine all the undeveloped spaces around the city of Cincinnati that are gray infrastructure, that are soaking up radiative heat from the sun during climate change in underserved communities, that with $300,000 to go and ask that community if they want a dog park or another amenity that maybe they need. And we could add green space to the city of Cincinnati instead of destroying it. The Audubon Society would love for you to give this to either Michael or Garrett or somebody if there's an appropriate place in Burnett Woods, so that when people come to Burnett Woods, they realize that they're in an internationally recognized important bird area. We only get one chance with this planet. Elon Musk is wrong. We're not going to Mars. Have a great day.
Here, and then Paulo Armutlier.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Last night, about 7 o'clock, I went to the Westwood Dog Park for the purpose of counting poop. And after I was finished there, I went to Washington Dog Park to count poop. And I put it on Facebook to have people guess how much poop was in each park, and nobody came near. And so to allay your suspense, there were 55 pieces of dog poop, or separate piles or separate smears of dog poop at Westwood. There were over 85 at Washington Park. When I was at Washington Park, I'm taking pictures. I have a picture of every piece of dog poop. People asked me if I'd lost something. I said, well, no, not yet. But I'm here to look at the maintenance problems in the dog parks. So at that point, people who were there with their dogs started chiming in how upset they are with how dirty the dog park is, and how there's no enforcement for people to pick up their poop, and how for people who really try to pick up their poop cannot, because it slips down between the river stones, it gets ground into the gravel, it gets smeared into the carpet. There's no maintenance happening to keep that fecal matter off of these dog parks. So we can't take care of the dog parks that we have. That is a big concern that's already been brought up, and I wanted to quantify that for you. And that's been a bit of a hobby of mine since I started getting involved here. But yesterday was the worst I'd seen so far. And I don't know what the answer is for you to maintain them, but it's definitely a health hazard. It's well known that fecal material carries all kinds of bacteria and viruses, and not only for people, but dogs. And I think I mentioned last time I was here, there were children in the Washington Dog Park handling those river stones that we know are absolutely filthy. So please, please do not put in the Burnett Woods Dog Park. Please put efforts towards taking care of the dog parks we already have. Thank you.
Thank you. Skip Hollow and then Tom Wurzelbacher and then Cynthia Duval. Morning.
I'm Kahlo. I live right across from Burnett on Brookline on the corner by the library. And I bike past it every morning on the way to class, multiple times throughout the day. I walk, we go there, we play Frisbee. I was not aware that this was even coming in, the dog park. Nobody assaulted me. I didn't even see a flyer, right? I see flyers all around campus about textbooks, about events, everything. But no, you're not owning it. That you want to put a dog park there, and the U is general, right? I don't know if anybody here really wants it. I think that's obvious, but someone does at some point did, and it just doesn't make sense that I was never asked. I'm not, and nobody really was. I had to find out about this meeting from like walking to work, and I ran into Cynthia, and she told me, right, hey, do you want this dog park? And I was like, well, no, not really, because I want to go play Frisbee on the grass. I don't really want to step in dog poop, or I don't know. Burnett Woods is beautiful and it's small, and as a student, Burnett Woods is an awesome place to go and be not in, because the campus is beautiful, but it's very not green, right? We fought battles on campus with the green space that's being closed off and moved and replaced. And so Burnett Woods is really cool that it's there. And I don't really think that to serve a very small amount of people that are going to bring their dogs there, or maybe a large amount of people that are going to bring their dogs there, those dogs probably don't even want the turf. I think we can do so much better with those $300,000. I think there are trails in Burnett Woods that could be that could have beautiful, we could have to subtract from the green, but we could do so much better than this. I mean, and I like dogs, but the dog park is just, it's a horrible idea. You can't maintain the dog parks that you have. Why are we gonna put another one? DC students do not support this. Nobody does. Nobody here does. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Wurzelbacher and Cynthia. You all.
Good morning.
Morning, Tom.
I'm not here to talk about the dog park situation, although hearing these speeches, I do want to let you know that I hope it's not too late for you to change your mind on it. I am here to thank the parks. I work with MAVPAC, which is the volunteer organization for Mount Airy Forest. And we just finished our wonderful annual event known as Trail Fest. It went off fabulously. And I wanted to thank several people with parks. Of course, the event staff, Lou and Donna and Crystal Johnson Roberts, who helped us immensely with volunteers. Special thanks to Brendan Bogosian, who helped us coordinate all of the hiking and the trail work. And I wanted to thank Jason for coming. I really like the fact that you're so out there involved with events, and we really do appreciate it. It means a lot. We do have other wish lists at Mount Airy Forest. As you know, it's a very, very large park. So coming with that, there's a lot of challenges. I'll mention one thing that is brought up to our volunteers who help out quite a bit with all the trails, which our trail network is huge and very difficult to maintain. So we get feedback quite frequently about people getting lost. And the signage within the park on the trails is old and not too good. And there's a lot of ways it can be improved. I think there has been plans for this in the past, but we do at least want to make you aware that it's a challenge that we hear quite regularly is a problem. I'll also mention real quick that the message board that's at the very front of the entrance of Mount Airy Forest is quite old and in much need of repair and preferably replacement. Something that is sheltered is what we're looking for. So I hope you can.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Cynthia, you're our closer today.
I wanted to address something that was said in the last meeting about Burnett Woods outfit staying for this entire meeting. One, I don't know why we would. For the sheer fact that on hot mic, we've been told to find better things to do with our time and liken to squealing pigs. So why would we stay? Or for the pulpiting that constantly rebuts thoughts that we share with you? It's not necessary. The reason that you know about many of the things that go on in Burnett Woods is because the volunteers that show up every day, that show up here to this meeting, which is at 9 o'clock on a weekday morning when most of these people have to be in class or at work and are taking time out of their schedules to be here just for 2 minutes of your time. We are in the parks every day. You know what's going on in this park because we write to you, because we show up to these meetings, because we tell you what maintenance needs done. We don't need to be in this meeting through its completion to know what work is being done in the park because we see the crews, we work with them, we volunteer by their sides. That comment was ridiculous for the amount of volunteer hours that we put into this park and the amount of love that we bring to it every week, daily hikes and things like that. Who does need to be in these meetings are the people who are not showing up to support this project. People that you're handing a silly amount of money to for a privileged project that does not belong in this park, that you've heard nothing but opposition to. You've got so much opposition to this in relation to supporters, and the supporters do not show up. I couldn't have told you who, I've been leading volunteer events for 6 years in this park. I couldn't have told you who any of them were. They don't show up to their community council meetings. They don't show up to volunteer in the park. They don't show up to park events. So they have no idea whether or not it is underutilized, whether the events are positive or negative, whether maintenance needs done. They don't show up. They don't show up in the parks. They won't show up to volunteer. You've actually voted against the volunteers that do, and they won't show up to support their own project here in this room on a regular basis, much less sit through a meeting. Yeah, we have 2.5 when we like it.
He's good.
All right, thank you for everyone that came out. I would like to ask Director Barron. I'm sorry, what's your name? Oh, Susan, I did call you. Come on up.
I do have a hand out. I will not trip over anything. Pass that out. I can. Well, okay, so first of all, I do research. I probably know more about dog parks, dog park materials than anyone else in this room. When I heard that a bar at the Banks was a reason why decomposed granite would be a good idea for a dog park, I'm like, that doesn't sound right, because we know people that go to a bar do not urinate and defecate at the bar. This isn't going to work because decomposed granite is porous and will absorb urine and odors will be cumulative. This isn't going to work because decomposed granite gets gunky when wet and sticks to dog balls. This isn't going to work because decomposed granite does wash away in the rain that we have video of, torrential downpours rushing down the hill, proves it. Here is a actual city who opted not to use decomposed granite, and this is their reason. We opted not to put decomposed granite or other gravel-like options down. Other dog parks which use these options report that the gravel is dusty, gets caught in dogs' paws, and tends to have a strong urine smell in warm temperatures. Decomposed granite damages hardwood floors. So anybody that goes to this dog park will have to flush their dog's paws before bringing them back in the house. Are you going to have signage to that effect? Thank you.
Okay. That completes our public comment today. Jason, I would like to ask one thing as we, perhaps at the next meeting, we look at what our maintenance plans are for dog parks. The things that I heard today are certainly not things that I've experienced and certainly not the conditions that we want to have in any dog park. So thank you for bringing that. We'll address that. I think now we can get to our actions. First is approval of the August 15 minutes. Have a motion to approve.
Approval?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we've got a hefty agenda today and it kicks off with the Trust for Public Land presentation. Jason, would you like to introduce our guests, please?
Of course.
Or guests? You too? Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us. And I'll try to keep my remarks succinct and hand it over to Will, who's gonna lead the presentation.
If you guys want, since it's a longer presentation, you're also welcome to sit down and lead it from there. But if you want to stand, that's okay.
I'm okay.
This is Sean. Sean's the state director for the Trust for Public Land. He's based out of Cleveland. He was with us when Joel and Matt DeBona, who's with us today, went to New York for a cohort meeting for our accelerator incubator. And so we went to that in New York and we had Sean there. He's been great. He's also joined by Kayla, who's also up in Cleveland, on the team. And then Will is the czar of the park score. And so he's gonna be walking us through all of that. And I forget where Will's based out of, but Washington, DC.
Sean, what's your last name?
Terry, Sean Terry. I think I reached out to both you and Kate prior to today. So on behalf of our team, I just want to say thank you for hosting us this week. As Jason mentioned, we've been building with the Cincinnati Parks team since April. This is actually our second visit to Cincinnati. We were here in July. Sort of a origin visit for us to really get a better understanding of everything that goes into protecting these wonderful assets, these natural assets, but more importantly, the approach that the staff takes. Like Cleveland, we're sort of in that mid-major, and we quickly learn that you take the resources that you have and create significant impact. Staffing, budget, we understand those challenges are like for our cities of this size. So we recognize the hard work that goes into maintaining the system. Jason mentioned, join with me, Kayla Geschke is our Parks for People Program Director. She works closely with me on our equity portfolio. Isaac Smith is our land conservation project manager. Isaac leads our real estate acquisition work throughout the state. Tate Ferguson is our park assistant. He leads our Cleveland Parks for Green Space Coalition. Really interested in building out a broader Ohio community of practice. And so some of our grounding work yesterday with the CPACs and hearing about the volunteering and land conservation management plans were things that we're going to take back to Cleveland and hopefully apply. Our process is really about building a structure where peer cities, we're fortunate to have 4 Ohio Park Score cities, can be amongst conversation with one another and positioning TPL to sort of be a liaison for that to happen. Laura Natt is our director of philanthropy. She works with me on our fundraising strategy and moving programs forward. And then Will, obviously, from our national research team. We work pretty closely with our lab and our research folks. They sort of give us the bandwidth to really dig into the data and figure out how we can best be of help in cities like yours. Before I hand it off to Will, I just want to give a little bit more background on our origin. As you know, TPL is a NAT in shorthand, Trust for Public Land, TPL, so if you hear me say that. We're a national not-for-profit conservation organization. We've been around since 1972. We're headquartered in San Francisco, but Ohio is near and dear to our organization. We're the second oldest field office. We've had a presence in the state since 1974. So I carry a lot of responsibility in making sure that our relationships remain strong and the work that we do is meaningful in Ohio. Conservation real estate acquisition is what we've been known for. We really established a field office in Ohio in around the era in Northeast Ohio when we were going through a lot of the environmental justice transitions. Cuyahoga Valley National Park wasn't a national park at that time. It was just a recreation area. And our staff was brought in to help lead that transition with the National Park Service. We've helped to protect nearly 20,000 acres in and around Cuyahoga Valley National Park. But more recently, our park equity work was sort of the transition that happened in the early 2000s and the 2010s. We know that Cincinnati was added to our bandwidth of 10-minute walk cities and park score. And we began working collaboratively with the city of Cincinnati and the Parks Department to look at that data. And from 2015 to now, we recognize that you all have been a top 10 city. You're doing a lot of things wonderfully well. We want to learn from that. We want to be able to help share that information. And those soft areas want to work with you collaboratively to improve. And we see a lot of opportunities to do so, which we'll unpack in just a sec. I had an opportunity to meet with both Director Barron and Director Betts in 2022 and 2023 at the Ohio Parks and Recreation Association Annual Conference. We're also members. We attend and we present every year. And use that as sort of an opportunity to introduce myself and talk about how important it was to work with Cincinnati. When I stepped into the role of state director in 2021 and created our work plan, we identified Cincinnati as the next priority city that we wanted to work in. A lot of our beginning work is happening in Cleveland, but again, recognizing everything that goes into being a top 10 city, it makes all the world of sense to be working in Cincinnati as well. And so I'm grateful for your response to that, and really that helped position us to go to our national team and say, we're creating a park equity accelerator, a handpicked cohort of cities. Cincinnati needs to be in consideration. We're already starting to have conversations around what cohort 3 looks like. And I know that there's interest in having Cleveland and Cincinnati in that as well. So the work that we do over the next 6 months will be extremely meaningful and hopefully carries forward. Lastly, I'll just mention a couple of things from yesterday going into today's site visits. Really excited that we had an opportunity to take a closer look at French Park. We not only had conversations with the CPACs, we had a chance to see the impact of their work as volunteers, removing some of the invasives that plagues the parks. That's an area that we may not be dealing with it as much as in Cleveland, but one that we hopefully can glean a lot from. You know, invasive species impact our trees, our ground cover. Seems like every year we're getting another pest or another rapid spread of an invasive ground cover. So really understanding the work that you all are doing to address that is meaningful, not just for Cincinnati, but our entire state. We understand that the topography in Cincinnati is challenging. We've had a lot of conversations already about how you all are value engineering and sort of taking an approach to address access, particularly ADA compliance. Everyone, and this is where we stand as an organization in our belief that everyone has a right to be in nature and enjoy the wonderful assets. That includes folks who may not be as mobile as you or not. So really respect the fact that you're taking that into consideration and prioritizing investment on universal access. And then lastly, really excited to see how you activate parks at a signature event. We were here in July and we didn't get a chance to stay for the music fest, but got a chance to do a walk through Riverfront and see how you were staged in that event. And we're gonna be sticking around through Friday to see how parks are mobilized around Oktoberfest. So really exciting. Economic impact is not in our mission statement, but the planner in me, the urban planner in me, and someone who's worked in city structures for over 15 years understands how valuable that is. Not just parks as a social connector, but one that can be a catalyst for the economics in cities. So excited to see that unfold later today. And with that, I've taken enough time with my remarks. I'm gonna hand it over to Will, but I'll sit here and we're available if you have any questions.
You know, our longtime director had coined the term parkonomics, right? Yeah, so take that. Have a takeaway here.
Thanks. Will.
My name is Will Klein. I lead the park research work for Trust for Public Land nationally. So that includes the Park Score Index, our Park Serve mapping application, various park research efforts that are of interest to cities across the country. So today I'm going to be talking about the Park Score Index. And so we've been doing the Park Score Index for over a decade. And before I get there, I just want to give a big thank you and note of gratitude to both the staff at Cincinnati Park Score, Matt, and the other staff across the different organizations in Cincinnati, who each year work with us to provide data and take that out of their time to make sure that we have the most up-to-date data for Cincinnati. It's a collective effort across 100 cities to do this, and so we couldn't do it without. So thank you. So what is Park Score? It's an annual ranking of the park systems in the 100 most populous US cities. And why do we do it? We started this in 2012 to really solve this problem that we were noticing nationally, that people need close to home parks and people don't have access to them. Over 100 million people across the country, 28 million kids don't have a park within a 10-minute walk of their home. That's not right, that's not fair. And this is happening in cities across the country. There's no federal local parks effort.
And so TPL as a national organization kind of took this on to have this collective effort to bring together all the folks like yourselves that are tackling the same problems across the country. And how do we have a collective voice to raise this issue nationally? Park Sport was one of the ways that we created to do this, to have this friendly competition, draw from a recreational side of sports and fun to kind of support local effort in addressing this problem. How does Park Sport work? Kind of three things to just kind of level set. We compare cities, not agencies. This is not a ranking of agency performance. This is providing what is the resident experience of parks in the 100 biggest cities across the country. We want to provide this data in a way that'll help city leaders make the case for where investment is needed the most and where opportunities to address access are needed the most. Cities are assessed in 5 categories: key to an excellent park system, acreage, access, equity, investment, and amenities. We'll get into that in a little bit. And then the other piece is, this is the friendly competition part. Every category is scored on a relative basis. And so we're not saying you need to have X amount of funding or X amount of basketball courts or X amount of acres. You're just scored relative to the other cities. So as cities across the country are improving, the ranking reflects that improvement, how you are doing relative to those cities. And what we do with this ranking is we know that because of what we've done over the last 10 years, the research that we've done, residents living in cities with top ranked park systems, they're healthier, they're more active, and they're more socially connected. This is research we've done over the last 2 years. We can see this quantitatively. Residents in the top 25 Park Sport cities compared to the bottom 25, 9% less likely to suffer from poor mental health, 21% less likely to be physically inactive, and then 26% more likely to be socially connected. These are big problems facing this country. Parks are a frontline solution to this. You all know this, the data shows this. And this is after you account for all the other factors that drive these factors in cities. That being said, parks historically, they are a product of US urban planning. They are not equitable in who has access to them, and that's not fair. Across the 100 cities, residents living in neighborhoods of color have 43% less park space than those living in white neighborhoods. We see the same trend when you compare low versus high income. This is a relic of the cities that we've inherited over the last 100 years due to urban planning decisions. And so what can we do going forward to address this? How can we do things differently?
Excuse me, I'm gonna leave what I want to say. I think that this is the greatest benefit. The recognition that these kids, these neighborhoods should have a park. Hell, a lot more important than a little dog park.
All right, thank you for coming.
Well, you're more than welcome. How's that? Good for you. Get these kids a park.
So we're gonna go into the methodology. We've been doing this since 2012. It's changed about every 3 years. We update the methodology to reflect emerging best practices. When we launched Park Score, it was 3 categories: acreage, access, and amenities and investment were in the same category. Each weighted about a third. In 2015, we updated it to expand the amenities. It was just playgrounds to include senior rec centers, dog parks, and basketball hoops. And then in 2018, we split amenities and investment into their own categories, added splash pad and restrooms, and then added the private organization spending and volunteer hours. And in 2021, we added the equity category. I didn't update this 25%, so that doesn't add to 100, but every category is actually 20% now. But in the equity, we look at park access and park space between neighborhoods by race and by income. And that's where we are today. And then one note on this, I think when you think about what does this mean, acreage and access really reflect, are there those large destination parks that have the natural areas that have the place for people to really go out on trails and just immerse themselves? And then are there those close to home parks? You have that close to home quick access to have that opportunity. And investment and amenities, you can really think about what's the quality of the overall park system? How much money is being spent to maintain a high quality park system, to program a high quality park system? Are there lots of different types of activities for people to do? And then equity is the newest category. Is it fair and who has access to that? And so that's where we are today. Here's how Cincinnati scores on this. 100 points means you're the top in the country on that. 1 point would be the lowest. The first thing you can notice, Cincinnati is above average on every single metric. That's why you're a top 10 park system. The amenities category is 94 points. It's actually the highest score in the country. So Cincinnati has if you look at the 100 biggest cities, has the best score in terms of the most different types of things for people to do in their parks. And then investment, equity, access, all in the top quarter of cities across the country. So next, the last part of this presentation, I'll compare Cincinnati against a couple of peer cities, look at trends over time, and then have a couple insights and observations, food for thought for you all to think about. It's tough to see against on this screen, but we're looking at a couple different peer cities that are identified in the future, the city's kind of future planning work. Minneapolis, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, and Cleveland. Minneapolis is the second ranked park system this year. So you can look at that orange bar as like, what does it take to be a top park system in the country? Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Cleveland, all similar situations to Cincinnati, all ranked less. You can see what is Cincinnati doing that separates them from those cities. I think the couple things that stand out to me when I look at this, one, I mentioned before, the amenity category, Cincinnati top in the country ahead of Minneapolis. And on the investment category, you can see Minneapolis 100 points for investment, Cincinnati at 72. But what separates Cincinnati from the other three cities is they're still above Pittsburgh, Kansas City, and Cleveland on investment. And Cincinnati scores relatively well on access. Equity and acreage are a little bit more middle of the pack, but we see that every city in the country has work to do on equity, so no one really gets a top mark on that metric. You compare over time, Cincinnati's been a top 10 park score city ever since it was included 10 years ago in that blue line. Minneapolis has been a top 5 park score city every year. Pittsburgh, Kansas City, and Cleveland, when they started in 2016, when we fully expanded to 100 cities, were in the 30s and 40s. They have kind of risen over time to the teens. And what I want to take away from this slide for me is it is a friendly competition. So just by doing what we've been doing every year does not mean you're going to keep the top rank. And so that Cincinnati is still top 10 does not mean you've been resting on your laurels, but you've been improving. And as cities have also been improving, you've been keeping pace more or less with those cities in the country. So Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Cleveland have been improving as well, but they still haven't cracked that top 10 as they're having conversations. How do we take that next leap? Cincinnati's, just looking at Cincinnati over time, green is the median Ohio city, so that's Columbus, Toledo, and Cleveland. And then Cincinnati's in blue. There's a couple clear takeaways. So we look at the 5 categories. Acreage, the amount of acres of park space in your city over time, relatively static. Access, you can see Cincinnati kind of separating itself from the pack. So that's something you've been really addressing over the last 10 years in terms of increasing 10-minute walk access through the schoolyard programs, through the work that the team has done to strategically look at park openings and creations. That's something to really celebrate. Equity has been relatively static. The investment category we'll dig into, that's really what's driven the kind of drop from 4 to 8 over the last couple of years. The cities have been really growing while Cincinnati has been static. And then the amenities have been relatively static. So I want to dive into the access and investment, just to put a finer point on it. This is the relative scoring. For the 10-minute walk, it's the only metric we have where there is a threshold. You can only have 100% 10-minute walks. That is what it takes to get to 100 points. But the national median has risen over the years from 68 to 74%. That's about 6 million more people within the 10-minute walk nationally. And Cincinnati has grown from 71% to 88%. So it's kind of risen 3 times as fast as the national median, which is pretty incredible. Investment is a different trend line. So Cincinnati on the access, that blue line was going up, and on investment, it's staying the same. The 100-point threshold, what does it take to get 100 points on the investment? What are the top cities spending? 5 years ago in 2019, it took around $177 per capita spending to get 100 points. Cincinnati was above that. Cincinnati has been at that around 190 per capita threshold over the last 5 years. That's about $60 million per year across the park board, the rec commission, Great Parks of Hamilton, the private folks, volunteer hours. But meanwhile, the rest of the country is investing in their parks 37% more than they were 5 years ago. So that increase that we've seen to keep up with inflation, to take advantage of the federal stimulus dollars is really what's driven the drop in score for investment. Can't really see this on the screen, so we don't have to dig into this too much. This can be shared, or if it's not already shared, it can be shared afterwards. I think the takeaway you can see in total is pretty much 60 million per year for Cincinnati's parks across the different agencies, except for a drop for the COVID year, which everyone experienced. I think 2 things to think about there's two ways to improve your score on park score. One is to have better data reporting to capture everything, and one is to spend more money. So one thing to look at is just make sure we're capturing all the different private organizations spending money, make sure we have all the accounting from the different public agencies, fully accounting for capital. The other thing to do is have those conversations. What would it take to increase this 25% in the city over the next 5 years? And then I ran a couple scenarios. What would it take to be first in the country for Cincinnati? So if Cincinnati maintained its 100 points in the investment category over the last 5 years, it would have required 77 million per year in park spending on average. That's up 17 million a year from where you're at the last couple of years. That's 51 million in aggregate over 3 years. That would have taken you, looking at the 2024 results, that would have put you at 4th instead of 8th. If you doubled down on access and equity, a strength of the city, taking the 10-minute walk from 88% to 95%, a lot of that targeting low-income neighborhoods that don't have any parks, closing that amount of park space between low and high-income neighborhoods, that would take you from 8th to 5th. And if you'd done both of those at the same time, that's what it would have taken to be first in the country. So that's food for thought. It's a historical retrospective. It doesn't say if you do these things, you will be first because everybody else is doing other things, but just to give you kind of a sense of magnitude of what the difference between 8th and first is. Couple key insights. I think you guys started celebrating being a top 10 park system for 10 years in a row since your launch. It is hard to stay at the top. New York, Boston started in the top 10. They are no longer in the top 10. They've fallen out as their spending has fallen down. Cincinnati, best in the country on amenities, lots of things for people to do in their parks. And then thinking of the two things we talked about, investment key to being a top park system. 6 of the top 10 park systems in the country score 100 points. 8 of the top 10 have 90 or more points in that category. Cincinnati is the lowest of the top 10 on investment at 72. And a continuing effort to ensure everyone lives within 10-minute walk of the park, why we started this in the first place. 7 of the top 10 cities have 98% of their city lives within a 10-minute walk of the park. Cincinnati, 88%, while among the best in the country, is the lowest of the top 10. So those are the two areas of what does it take to go from 8th to first. Think about going forward. And thank you. Welcome for questions or presentation.
Okay. What impact do you think this whole situation and what you've done is having on getting federal money for parks?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have a whole federal conservation finance team, the federal affairs team that works with cities across the country to bring in dollars from the infrastructure bill, all the different acronyms, IRA, BIL, ARP, all sorts of things. What we've seen this past year, this year, the FY23 year was the most recent year we looked at, was the first year was the highest amount of spending in local parks since before the 2007 Great Recession. If you adjust for inflation. If you adjust for inflation, spending in local parks has not caught up to the Great Recession impact on local economy until this year. And the reason why, from looking at the data, was the infusion of from the federal stimulus funds. It all happened in the capital. And so it's a blessing and a curse, but it's not a sustainable funding source. And so that's something to celebrate. The cities are able to bring in dollars from that. And something to look out for. How do you boost operating budgets to maintain those parks over time? And how do you change that dynamic on the general budget, which we have not seen catch up to 2007 levels on average?
Couple of questions if I can. One of them is a compliment disguised as a question. I had the opportunity to go. It felt deep to me. I suspect it barely scratched the surface on our data with Matt a couple of years ago, and it felt enormously robust. And I assumed that we were an outlier in the quality and depth of data. Was I right, or was I just wowed? I mean, it seems to me that we have really good data. Is that?
You have one of the best park data persons in the country, sitting right here. And so that's the right observation.
Good, thank you. And the other is sort of two questions, but kind of one. And I noticed Great Parks, Hamilton County. I think the inclusion of rec assets absolutely makes sense. would things like Cardinal Land Trust, Hillside Land Trust, are the other, they're included in that as well? Then the broader regional complication question is, you know, our MSA for certain would include, I think, 15 counties that would include Northern Kentucky and Southeast Indiana. Are we just Ohio? What is Cincinnati in this consideration?
Ours is a great question. Our unit of analysis is the city limits. And the reason for that is to keep it focused on the mayor, what the mayor can control, and have that be the political leverage point. And so Matt, a lot of the work Matt and like for Great Parks and Fulton County, it's hard for them as we ask them every year, what are you doing just within the city limits? Even though we know residents are going outside, they obviously don't, I want to say they don't care about just within city limits, but they are managing differently. But that is, yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, that's really remarkable, given what we know about our city limits, that we're confined. And that other cities that are our size, their city limits it's a much larger land area. So that's why which I presume is so low, even though I know you say it's covering small.
Yeah, your investment is still no longer under top.
Right. Well, I think that we've got some things to position to City Hall, right? More funding. Got to keep up.
Yeah, that is,
Got to keep up with Cleveland and Columbus.
I hope that you are able to use this to advocate in case the city of Hall as opposed to feeling like this is saying, assessing the performance of the park board. Because what we want to do is provide the data to empower you all to advocate for the resources you need to address the needs in your parks.
Okay, can we go back to the slide you were talking about, that if we move this to this, move this to this, we can be number one. It was
Second to last. Boom.
right. I wanted to spend a little bit more time on this. I just wonder what strategies come to mind to accomplish this.
Is this, could we get this offline? Because I only digest numbers so quickly.
Yes,
So-
we would like a copy of this.
Of course.
Yeah, we can send it, and then we have if you're a spreadsheet or numbers person, you can just plug in stuff and see what if. And then just the caveat with all this is we can only look what happened last year. And so you might want to bake in a little bit of assumptions of growth over time. I think the big things overarching that will always be true with Park Score is that we want to help advocate for the investment that's needed to maintain a high quality park system and to create and improve parks where they're needed the most in terms of serving underserved, historically underserved area of the city. So those are like two principles that will always be true in methodology.
So as I look at these scores and things that we can do that will quickly move us up the scale. One, I just wanted to note that if you look at a couple before this, it does seem like the Cincinnati Recreation Commission might not have submitted all of their numbers because there's a drastic drop in their investment in this calendar year. But we still overall saw our region increasing the amount of spending per person, just not increasing maybe as fast. But as we all know, that the citizens recently decided to sell the railroad and create the railroad trust. We should be hearing pretty soon how much money we're going to get out of that, but that should see at least hopefully close to double the investment in capital projects a year, which will be really great. Also, as I looked at that score, back when we were scoring 100, we were building Smale Park, which was a big ticket item that we will, as we look at our 3-year forecast, we got some big ticket items that we're going to be moving towards in the coming years. So I think we've got a lot of opportunity to increase that investment, maybe not 17 million a year, I wish, but certainly several million a year that should help us keep pace or maybe even improve there. And then when it comes to access and equity, those are two things that we're using the data to help drive. So this accelerator that we're involved in is all about equity investment and how to more equitably invest in parks. We've talked about the challenges in that, which many of them are historic, right? The fancy amenities have been in the parks for hundreds of years in the neighborhoods that they've been in. But again, as you look at the 3-year forecast and some of the decisions that we're making, we're trying to add that lens and we're hoping to use the equity accelerator to get us some metrics we can use to help. We know what neighborhoods need more investment, but we want to put some data behind that to help drive that. And it's something that I know this board shares, certainly our staff shares as a commitment, and the city council does. I think it's going to be something we can use to help drive the investment piece on the front end. And then lastly, I would say as far as access, that's the one that's trickier because green space is where green space is. And so one of the things that Matt's been working on with the data is there are areas in our parks where we might be able to make small investments to drive big access increases. So whether we are starting to target areas for potential future parks, which obviously take even more investment and have this yin and yang of, but we have a lot of parks that we're trying to keep up with, but we want to create new parks in order to create more access. But there are also some parks where there might be a hillside that's totally forested or maybe covered in invasive species. Well, maybe if we were to work with Department of Transportation, create a crosswalk, create a park entrance, and create some steps up that or a trail up entrance into the park that way, we can open up a whole neighborhood or a whole area of neighborhoods that don't have access to green space. Well, now we can create a way into a park that's already there and change. And so there's some smaller things we can do like that. So it's basically like a two-pronged approach. One, we need to be looking for opportunities to find, preserve, create green space. That's harder and more capital intensive. But then two, there are some things we can do with existing green space to think more about how to get people there. And on that point, I couldn't agree more. I guess I don't know how Matt ranks against all other data people in the parks, but I know we got a damn good data guy. It's Cincinnati Parks. And so one, he's created this incredible metric and he's worked with the TPL where a lot of times the city looks at like either census tracts or neighborhoods, right? We've all seen the 52 neighborhood map. Matt's created layers where you can go to any park and click on it and it'll show you every single house down to the like John's house, but not Kick's, that is 10 minutes walk from the park. So John might be 10 minutes, Kick 10 minutes and 10 seconds, you're out. And so it looks like these are regular trapezoids or rhombus structures. I'm not doing good at my geometry here, but we can do that for every park. Secondly, then he's taken that data and he's working with Children's Hospital to have access to some of their health data. And so, which is tough to get. Hospitals are very protective of health data, but they can anonymize that. And then what we're trying to do is factor in health data as a leading indicator of some of the struggles that we're trying to improve in order to try to make this justification, which then layers in with all of the work the foundation, Lindsay in the back representing the foundation today, are doing with Parks for Wellness. And we heard from Kathy Crane and Jen Spicer and Dr. Sean Cotton from the Osher Center a couple months ago to kind of create this additional wellness layer. And we're going to be able to use some of the data that's Matt's collecting and sweet talking some of these data institutes that share with us to try to factor in another layer of how we're thinking about this. So a lot to all that, but we really are trying to push the envelope on using data to make really good decisions about what we're doing.
Has Parks for Wellness been on your radar?
Yeah, so we, a couple ways. One, we're working on a couple projects with the say of park prescriptions where doctors, like pediatricians, prescribe a park visit to a family with a kid who's dealing with mental health or physical activity concerns. So how do we support those efforts?
But it's not on this metric.
Oh, in the metrics, no, the park score is designed to measure park system assets. So the things that a park system can do to make the opportunities available for wellness. And what we've done on the wellness side is we've done a correlation that shows the cities that rank best on park scores that have these assets also have higher rates or better health rates, if that makes sense.
I should also mention that when we release Park Score annually, there's an addendum document that takes a deeper dive into a specific topic. The last 2 years have focused on social isolation and mental wellness. We don't do a great job of like talking up that study, but there's a wealth of information that is well researched that you should take a look at that. In addition to that, I also mentioned just a nod to Cleveland. Our office was recently awarded an EPA grant through the Community Change Program. It's a Track 2 grant that's going to really allow us to build the type of infrastructure that you all currently have here in Cincinnati. But in addition to that, that award, Metro Health was awarded a Track 1 fund for implementation. So through the Track 1 and 2 discussion, we're hoping to glean more about how they're approaching data and measurement in the healthcare system in Cleveland. And again, through our communities of practice, that's an area where we want to be like sharing that information. Love to hear the work that Matt is doing. I'm already thinking about how we can mirror that approach when we have our opportunity with our healthcare system in Cleveland.
I have one question for you. You see a lot of parks. What are some things that urban parks are doing that really excite you? Something that we may look to in the coming years.
I think at the park system level, there's a lot of creativity in who you're partnering with to either repurpose other existing public lands. And so like Toledo just repurposed some industrial land into a waterfront park. Working with utilities, schools, you guys are already doing schoolyards. So there's a lot of work and creativity on that side of like unexpected partners. And then also on the programming side. So we partnering with the health systems. So we did a survey for one of these 2 years ago. I think only 5 or 6 of the 100 cities actually had money coming from a hospital or health system into the parks. Maybe a quarter to half had some sort of partnership, most of it on like planning. But thinking about parks are a front line. We all saw this in COVID. They were like the one place that stayed open where people had a chance to get outside, connect with friends, like that social lifeline. Park systems across the country were delivering COVID vaccines, COVID testing, meals, like parks are the social service kind of backbone of many cities. That's not appreciated as much as I think it by leaders as it is by the residents who depend upon them. And so partnerships that with those organizations, social service organizations, to kind of align goals in a financial way, I think is one of those things you can think about that would be a game changer in terms of aligning strategy and funding to make that happen. So I think, I don't know if it was Simpson, there's like a lot of Medicare plans have like silver sneaker type things where they can, as part of being on Medicare, you can have free senior programming or whatever. And so having the Park and Rec fitness programs be an approved recreational provider is one of those, I don't know if it's easy, but like common sense things to enable that access to that population that needs that. And so thinking about those strategic health partnerships, I think there's a lot of room and opportunity there, both for increasing actual park creation, also the programmatic aspect of it, and targeting populations who really could benefit and want to spend time in parks and want to have programming designed for them and their needs. You have a great healthcare system in Cincinnati, so.
You do. Good. There's definite opportunity there to expand on some things that have already started. Looking at you, Lynn. Questions for
It's a great partnership.
so much.
With TPL long before I was here, but it really feels like we're getting a lot of great data and great partnership out of them. And we want to lead the way, but we also want to follow and learn from others. And so I love your question about what gets you excited about it, because we went to New York City and saw some really cool, you want to talk about a place where there's spaces that are premium. We saw some really cool work they're doing to take schoolyards that were just like asphalt and nothing and really revitalize them and make them really vibrant places that are just kind of areas kind of just stuck between buildings, but they're doing some really cool stuff to make awesome places for kids to play. So there's just a lot to learn there.
Great. I have one other item, which is, this is the first time that I think you've been in this meeting, unless you came to a meeting that I've missed in the almost 4 years that I've been on this.
First time here.
First time. So we'd love to see you before another 5 years comes. We appreciate it. And then I would even say in the off years, I mean, we would love to hear from you, Matt, as a top data in the country person in the parks. We'd love to hear about what you're seeing, about what we're doing well, what is important for us to maintain, and what we're seeking to improve to align ourselves around some key objectives. So kind of bring it all together. So you have a great reputation.
Yeah.
We don't see you as much as we probably ought to or would like to.
I'm busy, so.
Great.
I will say now that Clayton has joined the team, it's allowed me to take a step back. And do a lot more deep diving in this matter. So right now I've spent the last 2 months making sure that we are actually accounting for all of our green space. and that all of these access points that generate this 10-minute walk are real. And just having the time to be able to go do that is definitely going to change our access score this year. So just again, you know, having our team grow, I think is important for us to be able to kind of leverage this stuff because it doesn't happen overnight. And there's a lot of work that goes into this data to make data-driven decisions. So like as the team's grown, I've been able to kind of leverage that and having Jenny, Joel, Jason, Crystal, Garrett. I think we're going to do a lot of great things. But again, it's just making sure that we have the team.
Great, thank you. All right.
Nice.
Thank you.
Again, I hope you enjoy Oktoberfest. We are very excited about its location at Sawyer Point and Yateman's Cove. It's, in my opinion, where it always should have been. So.
Come back for a Browns game.
December 19th, we'll be hosting the Browns.
Nice.
FYI.
FYI, not that I have the Bengals schedule in my head or anything, but. Yes. Gotcha.
Hospice in Cincinnati.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. All right, we have Joel. Where is Joel?
So unfortunately, Joel is sick. So I will be giving Joel's report today. I wanted to, so the first thing up is on our action item is the pickleball shade structure. And so we go to number 111. It will show that, page 111. So this is the pickleball shade structure that we've been working with our friends at Pickleball Sawyer Point to design for the over the steps. The seats, which are kind of like a bleachers almost, kind of like steps. Anyways, we've been working on this, so pickleball's been incredibly successful. People were down there all the time playing pickleball, playing tennis, enjoying this revitalization that happened in 2022. We originally were going to we thought in coordination that we wanted to cover the entire seating area. In discussions with the group that they wanted to leave one piece open to allow some access. That's where the entrance is and some different things. So we're only going to cover 2/3 of it. If you go to the next one, you will see the structure and we will coordinate paint colors to make sure they match with the specific paint colors of the entire Sawyer Point and Bison Commons area. That is like a canvas type structure. We asked them to mirror what's going on, what we have at the PNG stage. And so this is what we developed. It's a $115,000 project. The Pickleball Sawyer Point has worked with the foundation to raise those dollars. And so we're ready to both accept the grant from the foundation today and then approve this project, which will be completed hopefully sometime over the winter. It's not pickleball season and we'll be able to move forward. I just noted too, in my brain, I was thinking through like the order of operations. We probably should move to item 4 on our agenda and accept the money to pay for it first. And then secondly, approve doing the contract once we have the money in hand. So if we were to do that, we were to go to page 134 as our first agenda item.
We've got page numbers on.
I apologize.
Oh, you do? I got it.
They like me.
34. Okay, I've got it on those pages. Got to get through the photos first, I think.
Photo section is always beautiful, but it is a thick section,
Yes.
especially this one.
Okay,
So
134.
134, we have our grant application. These are from Parks Foundation grants. We actually do have to make a modification here. I think there was some miscommunication from our team with the foundation about item 2, which was the Lido Park bronze sign recreation. The Parks Foundation has some funds for some other signs, but not any funds specifically for Lido Park. So that was on Joel's report last month. We're going to recreate the Lido Park historic kind of bronze sign, but the base was stolen. So we're going to do a new cast of that base, and then we're going to create several of those bases. We have a bunch of these historic signs in storage. But I think that, again, there was just a miscommunication about the funds that will bear from the foundation. So we're still doing that. The foundation will be supporting us on some other signs where they do have funds for other parks later.
So what should this say?
So it should just say that we're going to accept $120,000 $5,000 for the Kennedy Kennedy Heights Park wetland delineation, and then $115,000 for the Sawyer Point pickleball canopy.
So we're deleting item number 2 from.
Item number 2,
Request and approval today.
and then the total is $120,000 from the Parks Foundation.
Great. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much to the Cincinnati Parks Foundation. All the contributors to these improvements. Now we can move back to approving the work.
Exactly. And so, so we've got this quote from Bruce to create this. Bruce has the city's recreation improvements project master contract. And so we'll be performing those through that contract for $115,000.
One question. What did you say the material is?
It's designed to mirror the material that is at the P&G stage at the Sawyer Point and the P&G lawn. But it's like a canvassy material. It's not a hard material.
It is canvas.
Hmm.
Do we know how long it's guaranteed?
So we actually got into this with the Board of Visitors recently because we were talking about making sure we had funds available to replace it. It was last replaced. I'm going to look at Jenny to see if she remembers specifically, but I believe it was like 10 years ago, but they have like a 20-year life is what I'm recalling as the like general lifespan for this stuff. But if you take care of it and keep it up well, that's just like a roof. It doesn't necessarily mean that's the limit of it, but.
Okay.
Tires never last as long as they will,
No,
you know?
no. Every good idea has maintenance.
Yes.
That's because
Absolutely.
Well, it'll be nice for people sitting in those stands to not get pelted by the sun.
Certainly.
All right, do we have a motion to approve?
so moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You. Right.
So you ready? Kate and I coordinated page numbers. So
Okay, we bounced around a bit, but we're back to your update.
correct, the update. So Joel's update is incredibly comprehensive. As always, as you can see, there are a ton of projects moving forward. If you have any questions about any of them, feel free to chime in. I'm going to mention a couple specific that we maybe don't talk about every month. First up is the Lytle Park conversation. We are using the third-party agreement contract that the city has with Megan Construction to get this quoted. There are multiple aspects of this. There is a roof repair that needs to happen. If anybody's been down there, there's a tree growing out of the roof. It's a small tree, but it is a tree growing out of a roof, which isn't good for roof integrity. But then there's also obviously the interior components where we're going to give the bathroom a complete refresh and make sure that we provide ADA. It's currently relatively accessible because it's a relatively flat bathroom, but it doesn't have quite all the ADA stalls and everything that we need to have. So that'll be part of it. We're also going to put some railings in. The grade, we hear a lot about the slopes and grades from Joel. It's just a little off that. And so if we add the railings, then it'll be ADA accessible. We're also going to do the masonry and kind of make sure it's tuck pointed and all totally watertight and secure. This is one of my favorite drawings that they've done. And it just shows the talent of our team. But there's some very specific problems where the way the bricks are currently laid out, which was 100 years ago, water goes between the brick and the concrete. So you can see there where the brick touches the concrete. Well, they're going to remove that entire top like cornice and put this material down, that green material that's going to slope and take it into that black material. And then boom, get all that water out of there. So it's going to protect that membrane between the brick and the concrete for years to come. And so it shows just the level of detail that our engineers and architects are doing to this project to not just bring an asset back, but to bring it back and then preserve it for forever. And the passion that our team has for preserving these old amazing structures we have is really incredible. So I would imagine we'll be bringing hopefully some quotes and a funding plan to you guys at the October meeting. So that's why I wanted to kind of walk through, but just, go back and then come forward. But if you go back one and you see those bricks and kind of what's going on with the infrastructure, and then you go forward, there's a difference there. That's the difference that we're going to improve and fix. And again, should make it just good to go for a long time. So our hope is this is a project we can bring to you at the October meeting and then get funded in another one that we could maybe complete over the winter and have it ready for early early next year. So really cool.
It's worth diving a little bit on in a public sector project, I would think 10% for design is a reasonable estimate. So that's a $40,000 contribution to the project from the internal resources by having built out that team.
Exactly.
I don't know if that's precise, but it's directionally correct that that's a real contribution that building that team has saved.
Certainly a good estimate, yeah. I would imagine, I mean, and that's been true for a lot of the projects we've done, where you're spending, tens of thousands of dollars even for a small project to get it designed and to get all the drawings and everything done. So the team's really talented.
Great. Excited to see the project advance.
So the next up, and I think I might not have put this one on there, but I want to show you 2 roof projects we've done as we talk about this roof project. It's just the next one down is the Mount Echo roof pavilion roof repairs. That's complete. Actually just heard from somebody recently about, they were asking about the lighting and when can the lighting be done. Our team's currently reviewing those mock-ups that you'll see in here to get the lighting replaced. That was part of this project. And so some of the lighting's not currently working, but we're getting it replaced and it'll be on soon. But you can see how they, in previous months, we had pictures of kind of the wood underneath, and we saw how that fresh timber straight from Lowe's or Home Depot was up in there, looking beautiful. And now they've put back the historic structure and it looks like they never even opened it up. But just like the Light Comfort Station, we've recreated it in such a way where it's going to last much longer. It's going to stand up to the elements much better. So kind of a fun one. Which then takes us to the next one I wanted to mention, which was the Avon Woods roof replacement. Excellent. And so this is one that the work has been completed, and it's just another one of these kind of deferred maintenance projects that are tiny. There's a million roofs we have. We did the roof on this building just last year, and it's been great. So I love being here when it rains. It's such a fun sound, but you can see where we've just fixed all the stuff and patched everything up relatively affordably, but we've got this roof now ready to go for a long time to come. So again, just the type of deferred maintenance that we're taking care of all the time. Roofs don't necessarily look beautiful when they're done, but if a roof doesn't work right, you're going to notice it as your team. And so again, we're just always keeping our eye on making sure these deferred maintenance projects are happening. So now we'll go back to Inwood. I just wanted to show this. I know we've talked about a lot about the 3-year forecast and adding out the team. This is almost illegible, even when Kate makes it big. But what that represents is Kelly, who's in the back, who's a new part of the team. We brought on to help us be kind of a project manager for some of this stuff. And so this is the level of detail that they're separating out the decision points, when we have to bring in. So on the far side, you can see a very tiny, you can see some colors. Those colors represent different phases of the project. But then between the projects, there's either a diamond or a circle or a square. Those represent different people that need to be engaged in the project at those times in order to make decisions. So I'm one of those shapes, which is like, all right, we got to go bug the director and see if he's got any money for this. Or, okay, we got to go to planning and see if we got approval for X, Y, and Z. Okay, we got to go to permitting. And so they're really starting to plan this out. Inwood, because we're starting this one kind of from scratch, because we already know we've got some funding available for it, and because I think we're all so excited to make this a really cool project, the kind of community engagement and a real robust plan that could be really exciting, is a perfect one for us to show this. So if you go to the next screen, I think there's a couple of them that are enlarged, but you can just see like priority 1 is safety and stabilization, and then it takes it. And again, we can show you all of this in more detail, but in this public forum, I wanted to show the level of detail and the level of sophistication our team's getting to really start to plan these out, which then allows us to have much better timelines, much better understanding of what the scope of this is and where all these happen. So I'm just really excited how the team's embracing this. And thank you to Kelly, and who's just been a great asset in leading this for us. So look, we got milestones for the project, like boom, boom, boom. We're just really fixing it up.
Is there a threshold? The projects, that would make sense for a
So they keep telling me they're going to do them for all of them, but I think that might be over the threshold. Kelly rolls her eyes and looks at Kat, her other partner in crime over here. But it's certainly for these major ones. We're going to try to work this in. The Sinton project also has one similar to this, which is a $4 million project. And so I think that, we have other stuff for Kelly to do as well. But I think, for these major projects are the ones we're really going to focus on this level of detail to make sure that we kind of understand everything we're getting into.
Jason, what is your, I see this as a really important project.
Absolutely.
It's been a black eye for the city for as long as I've lived in Cincinnati, which has been 30 years. It is an important park because of its visibility, but also because it connects the two economic centers being downtown and uptown. And it also is in Mount Auburn, right? Is it actually in Mount Auburn?
Yes.
So I want to be sure that we have adequate community engagement from all those, as well as some engagement from this park board in terms of what do we want this park to accomplish? There's some really straightforward stuff. We've got a pavilion that's got some serious issues, but there are other questions to answer, like who are we primarily serving with this park? And what is it? What do we want it to be? Is programming a significant part of it, or is the playground the biggest thing? So I want to understand how we'll engage both us and the community at large.
Gotcha. Well, we definitely will be. One of the things, so recently, Joel and I were asked to do a presentation on Ziegler Park, which neither of us had anything to do with. But we did get a lot of information, and Human Nature is this really great presentation they did that shows all of the engagement that was done around Ziegler Park. I mean, it was about a 14-month process where they started with kind of I think there were 4 different meetings that they did. And so I don't want to say that's a template, but I'm excited about that level of community engagement. And that's going to be one of the things that as we put out the RFP for the design firm that's going to help us design this, we're going to want to have a lot of community engagement there, because there is, I mean, on some level, it's not a blank palette, but there's just a lot of opportunity to do a lot of stuff there. You know, there's a lot of forested areas that have been totally overrun with invasive species and now can then lead to campsites and other activity that we don't want. There's a giant wall like a retaining wall on the south side that we need to really make sure that we're protecting that neighborhood for a long time to come. And then there's just a lot of open space and opportunities for new things there. So we want to have robust community engagement, and we want the board to be part of that. I think and on some level, we picked up the Owl's Nest project kind of midstream, but we've done that with Owl's Nest, where we've had at least 3 community engagement sessions. We've had a lot of board members there. We've received a lot of feedback. And I think we got to a project where at the last meeting, I think Susie was even like, don't you guys have anything to say? Because everybody was just kind of like, great, when do we get started? Because we had done enough pre-work that everybody was like, yep, that's where we want to go.
So let me ask you specifically, and maybe I'm getting too in the weeds on this. We're going to hire a designer for a master plan. What engagement goes in before we get concepts of a master plan versus what is done after that? Just lay that out first, because some people here have not really been through this process. This is almost like the first project where we're here at the
soup to nuts
at the beginning. And I hope it's not 5 years from now that we're delivering a park or longer. We'll figure out I'd like to figure out how to get this through.
Yeah. So I think what I would say just is that I share that commitment. And so I'll get the specifics of how we want to do that. And as we roll out, kind of putting that RFP out, that will be a key part of it. And I'll be able to, I guess, better explain maybe some of the steps. Because I think on some part, that will be something that we want the design team that we're working with to kind of think, how do you guys do this? What is your plan for how do you want to lead us through this piece of it?
Yeah.
But I can definitely get more detail.
And it may be the master planner that does this, but I think, I'm kind of thinking out loud here, but almost a set of assumptions that we can agree on are what we are using to consider what this park becomes. Back to who this park is serving. So that, we can take the approach of, this is what a Cincinnati park is. These are the components of a Cincinnati park. I just think that each of these parks has got, it can offer its own unique experience, and understanding who it serves, I think, is going to be a really important component of what it becomes.
Yeah, let me think about that. I think that's a good place to start. So
great.
Excellent. Okay, so next up, let me see where we don't get lost in the pages here.
So hard to read that. And find out.
Inwood Park. So just a couple quick pictures I wanted to show, Eden Park Art Museum Drive. So just down the way from us, I'm mostly showing this just because I've been nerding out over it, because I can walk over and check it out every day or every couple days. But these are just the drawings of what's happening, and then let's go to some of the pictures. They've put in 1 million these columns that are down like 30 feet into the ground. In fact, I was over there and I was talking to the guys. They go down about 14 to 15 feet, mostly dirt, different, and then they get actual rock and they drill into the rock, and then the concrete's actually in the rock. This road is going to be good to go for ever and a day. But then they put these they put these giant concrete barriers in that are just long enough to touch both of the pier walls, right? And so then they're bounced against that. And then over the last couple of days, in the next slide, you can see they've been adding this rock fill in to then fill it back up, which is just, again, I'm not an engineer, but I like to learn from Joel, and I like to learn as I watch these projects. The next slide, you can see how they're just kind of really recreating it. And then in a couple of weeks, I'm guessing we're going to start to see actual things like sidewalks and the road get done. But currently they're just putting the infrastructure that's going to protect that for a long time to come. That slab is the original stone piping that was used for the stormwater. So back in the day. And then the next slide, I think we have more. Oh, so anyways, so it's a really cool project, and it's another one that when the county passed the dollars to increase Metro bus service, one of the pieces of that was there would be this infrastructure revitalization dollars that were in it that were for major projects throughout the community. This is being funded by a $1.1 million grant from that project. And then we're in for about 175,000, transportation's in for the other 175,000, but it's a project where that grant that is part of that expanded bus service sales tax has gone to pay for this. And it's just gonna be a really great improvement. We're going from like a very rickety, some asphalt, some concrete, very scary sidewalk to being a really nice shared use path sidewalk that's gonna make that really nice. So very cool. If Joel was here, he would, and he's listening in, I know, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that. They did uncover some of the old stormwater in some of the photos he showed, and we're doing a change order to connect in some of the stormwater pipes weren't connected in. They were going to nowhere, which helps with erosion, as we all know. And so we are using some of the contingency to connect those back in. I think $80,000 the contingency, $35,000 the contingency to fix that up, which Department of Transportation came to us, and it's been a great partnership. So cool project. And then next up is I think it's just at the end of this is the next one. So we've had a rash of sinkholes that have happened over the couple of weeks. When I was out of town on vacation, Jenny and Joel moved forward 2 different sinkhole projects. We found 2 sinkholes that were at Mount Airy and then at Eden Park. So this is the one in Eden Park, right across from the Fulton Avenue Comfort Station. You go to the next photo, and then anyways, so you can see that was was dissolving away, and that was right at the edge of the parking, which means that if somebody parked in that spot, it was possible that could have caved in. And so we jumped into action right away to get that fixed up. The other one is in Mount Airy. And then as you go to the next slide, that doesn't look good, right? And that is pavement that people were driving on. And so we're getting that fixed. The first one was, and this is under our $50,000 threshold. So we took it out of the funds that you had approved in the capital dollars for basically these emergency and deferred maintenance repairs. And that one was $35,800 with one of our stormwater management contractors to get those fixed. And then and that was on August 21st. And then a couple of days later, on September 4th, there were 2 more that were made that we found out about. One was this one at Mount Airy, which, as you can see, that evacuation that is right at that storm sewer. If the sharing thing wasn't up, you'd see it better, but there you go. You can see that that's definitely a real problem. And then there was one at Mount Echo as well. Oh, wait, yeah. So, and then this is the one at Mount Echo. That's the location. And then the next slide. Again, not great. And so again, this is just highlighting that we put aside in the capital budget for this year, $750,000 for these types of projects, for these oh my goodness, we've got a hole like this in asphalt. We need to fix this right away. And Joel and his team remain committed to not only taking care of the deferred maintenance we know about, roofs, I showed you earlier, but deferred maintenance that, surprise, your Thursday morning is going to be worrying about sinkholes. And so we're on it, and we're trying to stay on top of that stuff.
I think it's worth calling out that that's not exclusive to parks deferred maintenance. That is happening in private sectors. We're in 7 weeks of no rain now. Turns out that a lot of ground is just not there where it once was. So this is happening in parks, but it's not just happening in parks. It's not a result of anything that way. It's across the region.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you know, maybe this is a goofy thing to say, but deferred maintenance isn't necessarily a bad thing. Because as Susie points out earlier, we're putting up a shade structure. Well, one day that will be deferred maintenance. It's great. We just heard that we are the best city in the country for amenities for our citizens, between us and rec and all of the different things. And that's awesome. And guess what? That's why we've got deferred maintenance. And so it's a great thing. We've got a ton of assets, and that's kind of our challenge. So it'll hopefully for many years to come, it will be the headache that we all deal with, because you're never caught up, right? And so we will always be battling this, but that's the kind of the joy of
maintenance, not deferred maintenance.
Exactly. So it's basically, you know, it's a good problem to have, but one that we're getting increasingly better at identifying quickly, at taking care of quickly, and categorizing. And again, some of this is the data work that Matt took off to go back to working on data apparently, but it's the data work that we're categorizing and we know more about. And then as we've talked about before, kind of in the early days, as we start to put timelines on all these, that we know that this roof was repaired on X date, so the warranty is good for this many days. And that means that 6 months before that, you need to have the contractor out here. We're starting to get those things. And what that'll do two things. A, is it'll help us make sure we get every bang for our buck out of our warranties. It'll give us a timeline on when some of these things will come up and when they will be needed to be replaced. So the pickleball structure goes in, you know, early January of 2025. Well, right on the calendar, 20 years from now, that's when we've got to be thinking about it, but it'll help us project out and show need better. So instead of having a report from Branson or Carroll that says $75 million worth of deferred maintenance, we'll have a projection that is 2025, $6 million deferred maintenance, 2027, $3 million, 2028, you know what I'm saying? And so we're just using data to get smarter and smarter about this stuff.
Right.
And then the last thing I wanted to show, and I didn't tell Kate this, but I think it's just the last pictures. Wilson Commons. Boop, boop, boop. So we've got an incredible city council right now and mayor that are really dedicated to park stuff and green space and the environment. But one council member I at least want to highlight, Councilmember Kremerding, 2 years in a row now has had a little bit left over in his council budget at the end of the year for being thrifty. And both times he directed that money to parks, to advance projects. And so the first project we did, which was just completed, I haven't got a chance to get out to see it yet, but I've seen the photos and it looks fantastic, is we did some invasive species removal at Wilson Commons, which is a great park over on the west side, kind of a neighborhood park. But we did some invasive species removal that connects two sections. There were two different sections and there was a line of invasive species on a hill where you couldn't see between the two, which meant that from the road, you couldn't see the upper section or the kind of walking path. We cleaned all that out. We used a little bit of our money, but mostly it was about $25,000 of his money to clean that out. And then the second project is adding this accessible spinner, which will be added at Wilson Commons as well. Again, he gave us around $20,000. We're adding a little bit of our money in, but just like we have up at Inwood Park, there'll be this accessible spinner. Wilson Commons is a very flat park. The parking to the spinner, no problem. And so again, we're just really excited to work with that council member, and I want to at least give him credit for wanting to advance things in parks and advance things in neighborhoods that he doesn't feel like are getting enough investment. So I didn't do my research on whether or not Wilson Commons is specifically in a park that we would consider like an equitable investment of the west side. Generally,
Wilson Avenue.
Yep. Yep. So another great project.
Terrific.
So that will conclude going through Joel's report unless you have any other specific questions.
Okay, I think we're on to Derek for the HR update.
So our friend Derek is at the Civil Service Commission meeting.
Oh, I know he's glad to be there.
Exactly, always fun. I'll just run through really quick. Another great report by Derek. We currently have 61 employees.
What page we're on, 60 pages to sort through this, or 150?
We were talking about how long that was, and Kate and I were talking about taking stuff out. But we just really like sharing all this stuff, right? It's, you know, it takes a while to skim through, but when anybody that's interested in what we're up to, we are making it all transparent and public record. Exactly. So things are going great. We got 161 full-time employees, 83 part-time employees. We currently have 17 vacant positions that we're working to fill. As you drop down to the bullet points, we just promoted Garrett Diano from our land manager in Crystal Shop that ran our Department of Conservation Land Management, and now he's going to be our urban forester. So he goes from being in charge of our trees in our parks to be all those trees that are in our streetscapes. A huge job. Robin Hunt, we recognized him for his retirement recently, but him and Garrett were able to have some time together before the transition, and so we're really excited about that. Garrett's been just a rock star for us for a long time, well deserved. You look at Crystal smiling back there. We've got 4 management or leadership level positions that we're interviewing for. We're adding a Parks and Rec maintenance crew leader, what we call in parks a district crew leader, to Crone. That'll basically be like a vice president of Crone, if you will. And then we're adding a DCL for our waterfront region, which will take care of Smale Park, Washington Park, some of the other parks downtown. And then we're also adding a maintenance crew leader to the facilities team. So all 3 of those we're currently interviewing for. And then in natural resources or explore nature, we're adding that position that is the new boss of natural resources that we've got. We've gone through the first set of interviews, and Crystal narrowed that. We had such great applicants. Crystal was only able to narrow it down to 10 for a second round. They've gotten a prompt that they will complete to kind of respond to, and then we will have presentations of that to kind of get down to the final candidates or the final actual candidate. But some really good candidates there we're really excited about. We've talked about in the city budget, we've added 3 new positions. So that is 2 laborers and the service crew leader for waterfront. That will be that second shift at waterfront. We're currently in the process of the service crew leader is a position where you have to test into it and the laborers promote into it. The list expired in September, and so they're developing a new test. That new test will happen this fall, and then we expect to have that position ready to go for the new year, or for at least the new season in March. That will be when that crew probably first takes off. You can read through here, there are a lot of great things going on. I'm really excited about just this Monday, the HR had another, what they call their staff socials. And so basically once a month, and they've been working with Rocky's team in the communications to have these staff socials where like 6 or 7 in the morning until like 9, there's 2 hours of coffee and donuts, and come by and talk to the HR staff. If you have any questions about benefits or anything at all, just get people together. And it's been a really good engagement session. I've been trying to go to as many as I can, but it's been really positive. And I appreciate Derek's leadership on getting those set up. And then there is the new parks onboarding experience. So Derek has been a leader in the whole city of creating, along with Rocky's team, this great landing page for folks that are newly hired. And it will have all kinds of documents they can access. It will have, if you look really closely, it'll have your pictures on there as park board commissioners. And then it'll have some information that they can, those might be, I apologize. Those are the different division managers. So that's actually Jenny and Joel and Crystal, I think, in those photos. But it's so successful and came out so well that Central HR has asked us to help develop some of those for some of the other departments. So I would say we're going to be every department's favorite department, but we're always trying to be a leader here at Parks. And then lastly, I would love to invite you all to our staff, all staff meeting, which will be October 24th at the Maple Ridge Lodge, which they're ready together to celebrate another great season in Parks. So if anybody wants to stop by, there'll be pizza provided by our good friends at the foundation, and it should be a good experience. We'll take our picture. We always take a picture. The last couple of years, we've been in the shape of the number we were in the park score. So we had a big number 4 that we took a picture of where 100 people stand and they all get in a 4, and then somebody gets up on top of a wall safely and takes a photo of it. And then last year we were 6. And so that might be something you guys get to participate in if you come out.
What time is that?
It is from Old Eyes. I think it is 11 to 1, 11 to 2. It is not on this one.
I can just add on the onboarding sort of webpage and the internet. In addition to that as well is that
that is going to also be developed, a virtual
Okay.
newsletter.
October
for employees.
24th.
So it's like a message board that people will be able to use, to share information, to share highlights. It's like an internal newsletter, which is the direction a lot of organizations are going with that versus, a PDF. So not only are we get important information, form like that, but we're gonna get a reading letter for accessible. Development is part of that as well.
Great, it's terrific. A lot of great news there, Jason. Congratulations to Garrett. I saw Crystal smiling ear to ear back there. I take that as a high degree of support for that appointment. Big shoes to fill.
Certainly.
It's Robin's role, right?
Yep. And before that, Crystal, so, and before that, Dave Gamstetter. So it's been a bunch of rock stars for.
So it's a path to retirement or promotion. Okay, good. Yes.
Maybe give him a couple months to get his legs under him in the new role, but I'd love to either members of the Urban Forestry Board or from the Urban Forester. It was so informative, the TPL presentation. My brain is overly full, but I think that sort of grounding orientation to different elements, to the extent that we can make room in agenda, I'd love to do
Yes.
that at some point going forward. And I don't know when the person will go. I'm not trying to volunteer Garrett for something or members of the Urban Forestry Board, but I think that'd be a great. I know I could use a refresher or enhancement of my understanding in that space.
Agree.
I've had conversations with the current president of the Urban Forestry Advisory Board, is former Parks employee Gerald Checo. And so he's mentioned an interest in coming in, so that aligns very well. Maybe we give Garrett a few months to make sure he's fully up to speed, I think, what you said, but yeah, maybe that November, December, we could have that happen. That'd be lovely.
We'll have the urban forestry assessment for this year. That can come before you by the end of the year.
Perfect timing.
Great. All right. I got shuffled around on my agenda here.
Yep.
Ready to go.
On page 123,
All right.
Commissioner Fund Budget. As you all know, the Park Board manages and is responsible for a bunch of endowments and different funds that are dedicated to the public, to make the park awesome. Some of them are dedicated to specific parks, some are dedicated to others. And these are also where we get all of our donations through the commissioner funds. And then once a year, we then appropriate a budget that is separate from the city budget process, but then it gets incorporated in of how we're going to spend those dollars for the year. Some of them have automatic disbursements that happen every year. Some of them we have discretion to disperse or not disperse. The commissioner fund budget had historically gotten really high over the last several years, as much as maybe $8 million in 2021. We've been spending it down pretty well. Last year it started out at about $3.9 million. And we passed a budget that would spend about $2.4 million in calendar year last year, or in the fiscal year last year. But then there's also revenue in, so it's not like it goes down by that 2.4 million, because then we bring in revenue throughout the year from things like the Chrome gift shop or contributions from the foundation. And so on page 124, you'll see kind of a full reckoning of that, the 2024 budget versus 2024 spend. One thing to note is through an administrative error, one of the big transitions. So last year was my first commissioner fund budget, and I had looked at the last couple of years, and I had seen that we kind of traditionally were not spending all of the dollars that were budgeted. So in the summer, the commissioners would budget $2 million, and then we'd come back the next summer and said, we spent 1.7. And so as we dug into it, what became clear was it was because some of these funds that are specific to individual parks would peel off money, and then it would be used as a budget. But that's not how we buy mulch, or we buy dirt, or we buy landscaping services oftentimes. And so those dollars were going unspent. And so I challenged our previous CFO to look if we could target percentages of individuals' pay to the park they work in order to spend down those funds on a more consistent basis. We will still buy all the stuff we need through our normal processes, but we switched about $600,000, $629,000 to the commissioner fund budget, which then freed up dollars in the actual budget, because we were now paying for these specific people that were doing these specific tasks to keep these parks great. Freed up dollars in the actual budget, which allowed us to hire the grant writer, has allowed us to hire a couple of other positions to fill out the staff. If we ever get fully to staff, what that Derek's report showed was we'd have 178 full-time people, which is more than the park system's had in quite some time. And this is part of that strategy. However, we didn't make the reimbursement of those, the way you pay is you pay out of these accounts and then you reimburse out of the commissioner fund budget. And so that didn't happen during fiscal year 24. So one of the things we'll have to do today is authorize that reimbursement of those funds, which again then frees up those other dollars. But once we authorize that, we will have spent just a little under the $2,427,000 that were authorized last year. We spent $2,406,000. So we did a good job of spending this down. And so the ending balance will be about 3.5 million. And then our goal is to keep spend that down. Over the last several years, not taking disbursements. For many of them to stay in and earn more money out of them. The disbursement, 5% of more is better than 5% of less. So the strategy is working, and we are working to spend this down. And I'm really excited about how we've been able this shift to using to connecting this to salaries and freeing up other dollars. We present here a $2.5 million budget, which is about $113,000 more than last year. But 90,000 of that are for one-time projects. So we're going to clean the pond at Crone Conservatory. We're going to polish the floors at Crone Conservatory, which haven't been done in a while. We're going to fix a trellis at the Mount Airy Arboretum. We're also going to add an HVAC system to the Mount Airy Arboretum, which hasn't happened in a while. You go visit Josh, who works out of the Arboretum in the summertime. He's working in quite a hot office. So that's like a $6,000 project that will buy the HVAC, but our team will install it. So we funded a couple projects like that. So the actual increase in one-time spending is only really $23,000 or just, pennies on the dollar or 1 penny on the dollar for the overall budget. So we've tried to keep it pretty modest. The other thing I'd point out is you'll see in the FY23 budget 3 zeros. As we transition from our previous CFO to Hedda, there's always learning and growth, right? And so Craig came in and had to kind of make the commissioner fund budget accounting his own as he took over for the previous CFO, and now Hedda's coming in. Previously, it seems like Craig rolled a couple of these items, auto truck expense, utilities and fuel into the supplies, because as you see, the supplies line went down by quite a bit, but those 3 items appeared. We're going to start reporting it. Basically, these categories match what the Cincinnati budget system reports. So we're just going to kind of mirror that up, which will give us much more transparency moving forward. So a small change in how that appears, but then it will be the same moving forward. So I'm happy to answer any questions about this. Otherwise, we have 3 votes to take.
Jason, I presume, Hedda, that we're looking at this, there you are. That we're looking at this monthly so that if we're not booking the expenses to the right place, we can adjust it in real time and that we can correct it going forward versus being out of the fiscal year already and now making a retro adjustment, which I support. This is the budget that we had approved. It was the budget that we had intended. There will be a motion to make a correction of that, thereby getting the expenses where they were intended to be, which in turn frees up some dollars in another place that can become unrestricted.
Absolutely.
So that makes all the sense to me. I just want to make sure we've got the discipline in place to monitor.
Well, that's been one of what are we at, 6 months? So Hedda's been here for 6 months, and it's a quite complex budgeting system. Again, like I talked about deferred maintenance, we're very blessed that we've got a lot of different funds coming in. We have the great support of the foundation, great support of the Greater Cincinnati Foundation that gives us dollars. We have a lot of other dollars that come in, but it's complex. And so as Hedda's been learning all this, it's been great for me because before Craig knew it all. So every time I asked a question, he had an answer. And I kind of trusted that because I had enough other things to learn as I started this job. But it's been fun to learn kind of together all of these different things. I don't know how many times I've said to Hedda, do you want me to get deep in this with you? Or do you want to just get deep in this and then come back to me? Sometimes she says, I got it. I'll tell you the answer. She goes out, she figures it out, comes back. And other times we sit down and we roll up our sleeves and dig in deep together. But we're putting in a lot of new processes and things in place. Gotten a lot of good feedback from other departments, or other divisions of the parks that a lot of our processes and our financial processes are moving forward a little bit quicker, and that we're really streamlining that. And she's got to compliment the rest of her team. Beth and Danielle and Ray have really done a great job of embracing these changes and embracing kind of being super responsive. One thing we've talked a lot about is as we have frustration with purchasing or other city departments, we need to make sure that our stuff is 100%, right? If our stuff's 100% and the lag time on, if there's name a day, if there's a week lag time, well, 3 of the days were our fault and we can't complain about the whole week. We can only complain about 4 days. And so we're trying to make sure that our piece is as minimal as possible. And I really want to compliment Hedda for how she's really done that and it's streamlining that. And so we're getting better and better on that to make sure that we're minimizing as much as we can on our end. And so, but yeah, she's been incredible for putting new checks and balances and steps in place to kind of formalize all this stuff. So.
Great. We had talked at the beginning about establishing a report deck that explain to the commissioners really how we're performing, because our historical report deck really just hasn't provided insights into that. And I see that you're starting to pull some things together that are giving some more, I won't say transparency, because it's not as if anything's been not transparent, but more meaning to how we're spending. So we'll look forward to.
Right, every month in your board reports, I try to give a little bit more information as I find information that I think is going to be valuable for you for ongoing decision making.
Right.
So, and you'll notice even in this report here, we've added a bunch of footnotes to things to kind of explain, you know, what the differences are from what you might have remembered from prior years, the budget presentations versus now. So that it just makes a lot more sense to you.
Well, it's worth making some room in our agenda for that as well. We've always had 10 minutes to review budget and financials or highlights. And that's gone to the wayside a bit, maybe since Craig's departure. But now that you've got your feet under you and are prepared for that, we'd like to hear from you.
Great.
Great. Let's get back to 3-hour meetings. You know?
So the first.
I know.
He remembers them well. So the first recommendation is to approve the budgeted 2024 salary reimbursements of $629,036. Because we're in a new fiscal year, we just needed affirmative, kind of like do what we said to do. Vote.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So the next recommendation is in September of Fleshman Gardens is one of the few parks that we contract out the servicing of that. That's something that Ginny and I are going to explore in the coming years to see if that's something we can take back internally. But it's been a tradition of parks forever that we use the Fleshman Restricted Fund to pay for that. Like a lot of these funds, the Fleshman Restricted Fund had gotten to a high level of being filled up. So that's what that money came out of every year. But that fund, or what's kind of the balance of the fund that's been removed, is now down to a couple $1,000s. And so in September of last year, when we approved the $200,000 kind of renovation and maintenance package for Fleshman Gardens, we also approved taking out $40,000 for that contract. This year, the contract is going to be $47,000 for Forever Green to do the annual maintenance, and that involves a whole schedule of things, but they're there several times a week to take care of it. And so we're recommending that we authorize a distribution from, that's the only restricted fund, or the only fund that doesn't have an automatic disbursement that we will be requesting a disbursement from. The rest we will leave in to continue to build up their balance, but we are requesting a $47,000 distribution for that to pay for the contract with Forever Green to take care of that park, keep it in the awesome shape it's in.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
And then the last approval we need is for the $2,541,220 budget, as is laid out on page 124. That will fund a lot of fun operational and capital projects throughout the year.
Second.
I have a question on
Yep.
this. Where can I find the commissioner fund balance as it stands? These are the outflows that you're proposing. Where are the inflows that will be? Is this in here?
So the commissioner fund balance as of today is $4 million.
It's written in a paragraph.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it is at the top of page 124, in balance at the end of the fiscal year. So on July 1 was $4,138,000 $1,796.
Okay,
And then the projected revenues in this year are on the previous page. Hedda did a great job of showing 24 projected, 24 actual, and then 25 projected. And as you can see there, we get at the very bottom, we get $380,000 of, and these are the required endowment distributions. And then there's actually a tiny typo there, which was my fault. I had corrected it in the voting part, but I did not correct it there. But $47,817 is the amount we're requesting to be distributed from the Fleshman Fund. So our projected revenue for the year is $1.7 million.
so tell me what your strategy is with this. We're digging into the Commissioner's Fund budget, $750,000 a year next year, which if everything works out as planned.
Correct. So overall, like I said, the budget, because it wasn't getting used for several years, the balance, so there's two different things. There are the endowments that are invested, which is like 23 million, depending on the stock market on any given day. And we have an investment committee that monitors those and seeks and checks with the performance of the managers. We have 4 managers. PNC manages the Bettman Fund. US Bank manages 3 of the funds.
We don't have to go through all that.
Okay.
What's the strategy with how you're talking about?
Yep. So the strategy is ultimately, in a perfect world, I think we would be spending what we take out of the distributions every year. And so currently we're spending that down. All told, and I would look to others for advice on this, but in my mind, what we would want that balance to be is $500,000 to $1 million that would kind of stay in it's been distributed, but it hasn't been authorized. So in case we have anything come up throughout the year. Maybe that's high, maybe that's low, but again, I'm looking for advice on that. But then we would, once we get to a place of spending what we take in, we would work to set a distribution policy every year for all of the funds. And so, for instance, the Greater Cincinnati Foundation has an investment policy of 4.7% of the 20 preceding quarters. So they take the ending balance of the fund for the last 20 quarters or 5 years, they average that, and then they distribute automatically 4.75%. And again, this is across their very large fund. We don't have to have anything that's so prescriptive, but my thought would be is that we would get to a point where on the revenue side, the revenue would look almost exactly like the projected revenue, would look almost exactly like the projected budget, with a balance that stays in effectively the checking account, which is kind of what's available to be distributed each year.
Here's my concern about this approach. We're turning up use of these funds essentially to support operations, right? This is not a sustainable funding source for operations because we're digging in deeper to the Commissioner's Fund than it will be able to support on an ongoing basis. We have not used the Commissioner's Fund budget, as you say, much in the past years. And a lot of that has been because we haven't accelerated the projects fast enough to be able to have something to use them on. What I see them as being a great resource for is to be a gap closer on high impact projects that we can't close the financial gap on. And at least that's the role that the Commissioner's Fund budget has served in years past. So my concern on an ongoing basis, I just want to set this up for discussion for next year because I will support the budget as proposed here. But that if we get this down to $500,000, it's not going to give us the flexibility to add the decorative fence that is historically, appropriate for a historic park because we haven't been able to close these gaps because they're hard to close. So I want to be careful about just using this for ongoing operations because we need our operations to on-go. And this will run out for that. And then we won't have anything available for these special projects that the commissioners really want to support and do best.
Okay.
So you'd rather see there be a little bit of a bigger cushion. Is that what I'm understanding?
I would like there to be a bigger cushion than certainly than $500,000.
For a fail-safe.
I'd like to see us using $500,000 to shore up these capital projects so that we can do them right. Because we're always up against doing a project and doing it right.
Yes.
We had a perfect illustration of that at our last meeting. So I want us to have that flexibility in this budget.
I mean, we can certainly build that into future budgets, right? There's definitely ways we can add in some capital dollars. And again, the key thing will be making sure that we still use the restricted dollars because those can't be used for just any project, but we will look to some of the unrestricted dollars to maybe adding in some funding that allows the commissioners to, you know, to build up a little bit of a kitty of unrestricted dollars and then also to be able to.
That's a good point. Some of this $0.5 million that you propose is restricted for that use. Some of it is not.
Correct.
It would be helpful for us to understand that still too.
Mhm.
Because some of this we're approving and just form because we have to. The dollars are there and they need to be set for that. But some of it is discretionary and that's really what our vote is to support.
Okay.
Can you give us some insights on your philosophy on the commissioner's fund as our long reigning commissioner?
Well, I just about croaked when I saw there was $8 million sitting there not being used. And so I'm very glad that it's getting spent down because it shouldn't just be sitting there. Plus, it sends the wrong message to council. Oh, they don't need money. Look what they've got in the bank account, over $8 million. This is just terrible, just terrible. And still, my biggest worry about the way parks are run and have to be run has to do with slow motion that we can get things done through the city. And so besides, and I think this is moving in the right direction, so I'm not concerned about this as much anymore as I was. But what I'm really concerned about is the way we have to do business with the city to get anything accomplished, therefore spending this money. And I don't see any wheels moving in council or in the city government to correct the way they do business. And I don't know if there's, who do we squeal? How do we squeal regarding that? And I hope that the futures program that you were part of would really address that. And the only thing that came out of it was they're going to create another committee to do business in the city. Anyway.
You know what I say?
Am I frustrated?
You know what I say to that? These are hands, not wands. So,
That's a good one.
any other discussion on this?
I appreciate and echo your sentiment that I think a resource for a long time for parks has been the availability of these funds that have grown over time. So preserving the opportunity to plug a gap, respond to an emergency need, that there isn't another funding source. I think that is important. My belief, based on probably not enough information, but my belief is that that ability can be retained while still using. I fully echo, we don't want to set up too much operating coming out of this so that it's not sustainable. That's the future commissioners will not thank us for that. So I fully echo that, but I think there is a balance that can be achieved there. And I think just exploring that in the preparation and exploration of future commissioners' budgets validates that assumption on my part. But I certainly echo the the funds that accumulated was too much for lots of other systemic issues that I think are obviously resolved, have gotten better, may have room to go, but have certainly gotten better. But yeah, I would hate to be in a spot where we wouldn't have the opportunity and means to make something special happen and get from number 8 back to number 4 back to number 1.
Great. Well, it looks like by this time next year, we'll be down to 3.3 in the commissioner's fund, which is far down from the 8.
Yes.
Which was not very long ago.
We're headed the right
So,
direction.
Great.
It just doesn't happen quickly enough because we can't get the business done quickly enough.
We had a motion to approve the budget as proposed and a second.
Right. And the second, do you get both? Okay, great.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for that discussion. And I keep losing my agendas. Okay, here we go. So, all right, we've got a resolution in front of us here.
Correct. So
Direct us to the page number.
this is page 132.
Right?
So in 2021, park staff worked with some community members to preserve a piece of land in Mount Adams that is near the entrance to Eden Park by Tom Jones Commons. Piece of land that belonged to the Cincinnati Art Club. And then the deal that was set up was that an individual would buy that and hold that land while the community raised the funds to pay them back and purchase the land and then donate it to the park board. The property was purchased, the fundraising effort started, and they got to about half of the needed funds that were raised. So the project, when I started here, had to kind of stalled at how do we get the rest of the money in? There is a green space revitalization or green space preservation fund that's part of the Clean Ohio Fund, where there is grant dollars available per district. I think there's over a dozen districts in the state of Ohio. And there's a board that then takes applications for preserving green space and then awards dollars to match. That's a 75% grant, 25% match on the receiver side. So Kara Shermer, who is our new grant writer, again, funded out of some of those commissioner fund dollars that we freed up in last year's budget. Wave Kara. Brought Kara in April, and she's been doing great stuff for us. I had a meeting with her just last week. She's got a page and a half of grants she's identified, grants we're funding, grants we're getting ready for, out for a while. And so
Kara, move your head around, Rocky, so we can get a look of it. She is.
But she's been doing just great stuff, and we're gonna not just fill your agenda up with presentations, but also with grants you have to accept. So we've gotten grant ready for this, and the grant is due tomorrow, but it would be for 75% of the acquisition and project costs. It's a very simple project. Dave Boutel, who's our East Region manager, who manages all of Eden Park, has put together a very simple plan to remove the invasive species that are there, a little bit of honeysuckle, a couple other things. Plant about 10 trees, I think it is, and put a nice little mulch path through it. Relatively simple. It's not a park that has to have a lot of bells and whistles. It's mostly to preserve this green space and ensure the view corridors and kind of this nice area in the neighborhood. All that would go into it. And so the total grant amount is about $256,000 or so. Total project amount, correct. The grant amount is, yep. And then the foundation would be kicking in all of the cash that needs to go into this project, right? And so the way it would work is there would be of that $90,000 or so they've raised, some of that would then be retained because it no longer has to go to the purchase price. That would allow us to have a bit of a kickoff every year, similar to the Commissioner Fund endowments. That would help pay for the staff time. Again, not much staff time because it would probably only be $2,000 or $3,000. But mows the lawn, so we'll pay a little bit of new trees or plant flowers or anything we want to do to it. We have a little bit of funding for it. So
It's a bit of a gateway property, but the concept here, just to summarize, is we would be accepting this land with no cost to the parks.
no cost.
But we're contributing our resources to potentially secure a grant. You guys are both doing this. To potentially secure a grant to help the cost of acquiring the property.
Absolutely. Yep. Another great partnership with the community and the foundation and us.
Great. Is there a motion to, I think, the resolution to apply for this grant?
Moved.
All in favor?
All right.
Exciting stuff.
Put a stamp on it.
And then the very last piece of a long meeting, not too bad, is a grant of easement for some Duke Energy utility equipment.
Page 135.
Page 135. A grant of easement for some Duke Energy utility equipment that is in Ziegler Park. So this project was part of 2 years ago, they took over Yukon Street and Woodward to kind of extend Ziegler Park. This was a 3CDC project in partnership with the city and the Department of Transportation because they were expanding the park into the right of way. As part of that, they installed some electrical equipment on our land And this is the easement that would just allow that electrical equipment to be there. It's just south of the bathrooms, kind of very well hidden. It's not much of anything, but it is not our equipment. So we need to give them an easement to have that there.
Motion
So moved.
and all in favor?
Thank you.
That concludes our agenda. Now on to director comments and then open commissioner discussion.
Excellent. So our controlled bow hunting season starts September 28th and runs through February 2nd. This program operates in 18 of our parks and preserves. Without any natural predators, deer population just threatens all of the work we do to get rid of native plants and to restore our natural forests. They're big predators on all of the small underbrush that grows back. Interestingly, deer do not like honeysuckle, just like we do not like honeysuckle. And so once again, we're going to keep our trails open for visitors. This year, we're working on a collaboration with Great Parks and the Ohio Department Division of Natural Resources to expand our respective public awareness efforts, and all that information on our programs on our website will be out through our social media to make sure we keep everybody informed about it. Wilson Commons, so I mentioned this before, the invasive removal, thanks to Councilmember Kremerding, it's just been fantastic. You can see the photos here. That's before, where that's just a wall of trees, and that's after. And so you can see how that hillside there in picture 3, as you go across, that hillside was all invasives. And now you can see from the top to bottom, you can see in picture 1, those houses are the road. And then there's that kind of early space, looks like it maybe used to be a baseball field. And then there's the upper space where there's the walking path. And so it's just been fantastic. Very similar to what we did at Glenway Park. We've gotten incredible public feedback on how great that is. This is also in the West District. Matt Hood, our West District manager, has done a great job of keeping the Glenway space free and clear. I definitely expected that to be overrun or to expect to see the honeysuckle trying to creep back. And if you go to Glenway, it's still very clear. Him and his team have done a fantastic job. We expect them to do that here. So just another great project to community park that not everybody's heard about, serves a bunch of folks, but not everybody, trying to make it better. So exciting stuff. Volunteer activities. Ooh, volunteers, as always, are super busy. We have a forest restoration happening in California Woods on September 28th. La Buena Woods having community work days on the 28th and the 5th of October. The Mount Airy Shepherds are working on land restoration on the eastern end of the park on the 29th, October 13th, October 27th, and November 3rd. The west side of Mount Airy will be out there this Saturday or this Sunday. I actually worked with them 2 weeks ago for my first honeysuckle removal, and they work it for 3 hours. But when you get done and you look back kind of over the area that used to be covered and now is not, it's really, really fun. Northside Green Space has invasive removal on September 21st and October 5th. Friends of Scarborough Woods removing invasives on October 5th. And the Alms and Alt Park Allies have, Alms Allies and the Alt Park Community Advisory Council have events going on October 12th. So this is really invasive attack season for us. Crystal will make sure I don't say anything too wrong, but as the trees retreat and lose their leaves and pull their energy back, if that's when you treat it with the herbicide, it pulls the herbicide in and it kills it at the root level. And so if you attack it in the summer when it's pushing its energy out and it's pulling from the roots out, it doesn't do as well. There we go, head shake. So they're teaching me up here. So it's just a great time and folks are out there, they're doing great work. I had a blast out there a couple weeks ago. So National Walk to Park Day. So we've given Kara a lot of love today, but Kara got her first grant for us. So we got a $5,000 grant from our friends at the Trust for Public Land for National Walk to a Park Day. And so that is a $5,000 grant that we're going to use to raise awareness for the importance of having access to a park within 10 minutes of your home. We're using it in the week leading up to National Walk to Park Day on October 10th to build awareness of the park equity gap, encourage folks to walk to their local park, highlight neighborhood parks that are not well known, and then campaign around a community event. And that community event is the October Fall Jam in Owl's Nest Park. So that's Saturday, October 5th from 2 to 6. There'll be music, free food, activities for families and teens. And, just a great partnership with the Trust for Public Land. So it all comes together, but a tiny grant, but we're on to bigger and better stuff. So exciting stuff. Events, we're just hours away from the kickoff of Oktoberfest. I cannot wait. We have International Children's Day, which is in Burnett Woods from 12 to 4 this Saturday. International Friendship Day, which is in Tedberry International Friendship Park, September 28th, thanks to our friends with the Theodore M. Berry International Friendship Park, one of our longest names, but one of our most historic. But that CPAC has been planning this, and that's going to be exciting. Even more before the Roar, our partnership with Bengal Gym and the Cincinnati tailgating experience for Bengals games continues to be high. I know Kick has been an instrumental part of, Commissioner Lee has been an instrumental part of growing that partnership. And that partnership has brought a lot of revenue in from beer sales in the park to help support our operations down at Smale. Alt in Bloom, the annual celebration of roses, flowers, and gardens is this Sunday from 1 to 4 at Alt Park. Of course, the Hats Off Luncheon comes October 4th. Go buy your fancy hats, get excited for that. That's always just a really fun afternoon to celebrate all the people that support parks and do so much for us. EzFest, October 12th from 12 to 5. When I first started, Rocky told me that there's a lull in the summer and then it comes back with a vengeance in the fall as the weather gets a little cooler. And this list is proof of that. But EzFest is October 12th from 12 to 5. Fall Fest at Burnett Woods is October 12th as well. I think that is everything. Yes. So just a ton of events and a lot of exciting stuff happening. Don't forget, Mum's the Word is a prone conservatory, just things throughout the city, parks all over the place, people having fun and having smiling faces.
Jenny, you haven't had to do much mowing. Waiting for the rain. Someday it'll come back.
The rain dance was not working, but.
Give them some of those honeysuckle pullers instead. It sounds like the time is right
It'd
for
be
that.
easier to pull it out.
Right.
Maybe it is dry when you saw through it. That's what I found, but still a lot of sawing. I haven't clipped so much with my hand in years. It was good exercise.
He gets blisters easily, doesn't he?
They're gonna make a worker out of me yet.
In my business, the worst thing you can be called is white shoes. So same for you. Great. Commissioners.
I just have one comment. As you know, we had Riverfest, big fireworks, thousands of people on the river. I walked by the next day doing my little fitness walk. It was totally clean. I could not believe how the staff got down there and got everything back to pre-Riverfest condition in such a short period of time. They are to be commended for doing such a great job.
It's great. It's like nothing happened.
It was,
Yeah.
seriously.
Really something.
So I was really, it's so impressive.
Actually, it was the first year we did not do a full overnight. We only went to 1 AM to do this. And it was very successful, but just knowing, from what they had done in the past, they did say the next day they came in, they were like, it didn't look as great as it used to, but.
Well, let me tell you.
Not first thing in the morning, but.
That's right. From a spectator point of view, it was very impressive.
It's great.
I only have one thing to say. We had our bells rung today on the dog park maintenance. I make that an assumption that that will be addressed immediately, number one. Number two, the $50,000 gift, where is that sitting?
So thank you for coming in. So that's a great example of the 3-year forecast. And that's a project that we did a bunch of community engagement on. And what we found through that community engagement is that we probably have at least $150,000 worth of stuff we can do. So you mentioned several things today. I'm glad you stuck around. I always hate that I can't get up and talk to folks and be like, here, let me explain. But we basically found that we had much more to do than we'd previously thought. Some of it is potentially one of the big things we heard through the community engagement was that the top, it's just a slight ridge, but it shows how these slight hillsides matter. But we used to put mulch in along the kind of top part of that ridge in the center, and then it would all erode away, and then we put more mulch back and it all erode away. And so the dog park users would stand around in the dirt, which isn't a problem, but if it's muddy or whatever, which wasn't ideal. So one of the things that we have talked about is doing some sort of a potentially decomposed granite or potentially even some concrete areas to give folks a place to stand that isn't so muddy rather than just keep throwing mulch out there and watching it erode away. But there's just a lot of needs there. And our team just has a lot going on. And so we've kind of put a pause on that, not because we don't want to do it, but just we want to put the right time in it. And we want to identify the amount of funds that we need for it. And so that's a project that on our 3-year plan of work is something that we're going to dig back into the first of the year. And we hope to get done in 2025. So I'm sorry for the delay, but
We can get to that after the meeting.
happy to talk to you afterwards. Yeah. But it's a project we're fully committed to. We just, as you see from Joel's report, we got a lot we're working on. And this one was one that originally it was like, all right, for 50 grand, we can fix and do this. And then it was just clear that we want to do it right. And so we want to do kind of, and thanks for the railroad trust funds coming in. This is another project where it's an asset we own and we're going to improve it and take care of the deferred maintenance there. So I think we're going to have a plan before you in the coming year.
I have come to learn that everything takes longer than we thought it would, than you thought it would. And oftentimes the money coming in isn't aligned with the resources that we have and the priorities that we have. And it's creates some frustration, I know, not just with citizens and residents, but with the park board and with the staff. So I think that's why our 3-year plan is a really helpful guide and making sure everyone understands where priorities are, including the staff, so that we can be focused on getting the stuff done. Thank you. Great meeting.
Thanks all.
They're not all this good, are they? Oh, they're like, oh, yes. I did send Jason a request, which hasn't come your way yet, for a potential reschedule. We'll send that to you in an email to determine if it's possible. We have the Thursday meeting, which is October the
17th. I think you proposed moving to the 15th.
Go to the 15th, same
I
time.
looked at my calendar right away and was like, that works for me. And then I forgot to sit. That works for me.
Going on the last couple of days, so we'll get that request out to you, and if so, we would be, if it does work, we'll have time for the new meeting schedule. Unless you all can look at your schedules now, in which case we can set it. Get back on it
So the proposal was,
I don't stop to have it on,
Tuesday.
well, not on a Tuesday and Thursday, but on any other day but Tuesday and Thursday. That's it.
Oh, okay,
But this is historic, so.
okay.
so the proposal was to move it up 2 days.
Tuesday, the 15th.
Proposal was move it up 2 days to 9 a.m. on Tuesday, October 15th. So should we have a motion and
No problem, okay.
do you have a motion or is that?
We'll have a motion to move the October 17th meeting to the 15th at the same time.
Second?
Second, all in favor? Great.
Awesome.
Thank you. I really appreciate the accommodation. We are hiking in with our children for the first time, like for 4 nights. Hiking? We're hiking in
Where?
Cherokee National Forest.
And then camping?
Camping, then hiking, then camping. So we're gonna put in 24 miles.
Wow. That's awesome.
Oh, got it. Sorry. We're
I think that'll let me.